Hi, I am Nayna Agrawal. If you want to learn more about me, my play Plucker, and the zip code series in which Plucker takes place, please visit us at antaeus.org and please stay tuned. I think I fell in love with theater in elementary school. I mean, it was my first exposure to theater, and I loved the idea of performing, learning lines, playing with my classmates. Yeah, I think there was just a liveliness to it that I hadn't experienced in other forms of play. So I think that's what drew me to it. My parents would have much rather preferred that I wasn't a part of theater. So if anything, I was heavily discouraged from it. But I guess the age-old cliche, if it's, I guess it's just a part of who I am. It's something that I felt like I had to do. It was what I thought about night and day, almost all the time. Um, so if anything, I felt like I had to do it despite a lot of the obstacles, including my family pushing against this really strong desire to pursue something as unconventional as theater. I mean, I've always loved writing. I think it's been in different forms. This is my fifth career. I started off as an investment analyst, but I did a lot of writing for IPOs and in the marketing space of investment analysis. And then I was a grant writer, and then I was a technical writer. Writing has always kind of been at the heart of what I've done personally and professionally. I think it was after my career in international aid that I started writing purely from an entertainment perspective. So writing screenplays, writing plays. So that was about 6, 7 years ago. And I think that love grew into an obsession. And I went and got my MFA, then came out to Hollywood to be an assistant at Shondaland. And then slowly my plays got produced and I got staffed as a TV writer. Playwriting format is unique to me in that I don't know that you have to follow a specific structure the way I have felt that I have to do in video game writing, in TV writing, even in some magazine articles that I have penned. I think there's a certain arc, there are certain points that you have to hit. I think playwriting kind of gives you carte blanche and freedom from any type of conventional structure and says, tell us a story as you would imagine it, as you would see the audience experience it. And you can sit with two characters with nothing going on in the background, just having a conversation and hopefully be fully immersed in it and just not take anything for granted. It can be something as mundane and quotidian as, an apple, and you don't have to justify it. I think you can sit with it and really just revel in what those two people are experiencing in that exchange. And that's why I love it. Where do my ideas come from? I think my ideas more and more come from my personal life. I think I used to shy away from that for fear of being arrogant or being myopic. But then a lot of my professors at Northwestern and my initial mentors in Hollywood would say, that's a great place to start. It's something you've experienced. It's holistic. You have so much authority and agency to speak to it. Why wouldn't you start with something that you know? So I think I write from often, not always, but often from something that I have experienced and I feel strongly about. My style of writing or my kind of approach to writing is usually I try to make that first draft unapologetic and try not to censor myself too much to get in the way of that initial idea. It's usually the second draft, whether it be a play, a TV script, whatever it is, that's much more challenging from kind of the mechanical side of it. Initially, I just kind of almost free associate just so that I can get my ideas down and feel like there's a flow and I don't hamper the excitement of this new initiative I'm taking on. I first heard about Antaeus Theater in, I want to say 2017. A lot of my playwright friends in LA were members and by members I mean, actors, writers, multidiscipline, what have you, but had some sort of connection. And I saw 2 productions of theirs and I thought they were just lovely. And then I thought the community was equally lovely. I think they're super supportive, very committed, very professional, very thoughtful. And for me, it was kind of a holistic experience in that it wasn't just a professional outlet, excuse me, it was a personal outlet as well. I developed a lot of close friendships, and a lot of allies, I think, through the theater. So I'm so grateful to them. And yes, I think that was why I initially joined and got involved. And there's so much at the heart of what I think theater and the arts, and in larger part, community should be. So my play for the Zip Code Plays series with Antaeus Theater, called Plucker, is loosely based on a true story where I was kind of brought to justice. um, in that there is an association that kind of gently polices those who pick flowers or fruits or what have you. And so I had plucked a lemon from a tree that was hanging over into an alleyway, and somebody brought it to my attention that they're hosting this meeting, and I went to the meeting to be kind of gently reprimanded. It wasn't even a reprimand, but I thought it was actually a great excuse to meet people and meet the community, but I'd never been in a space where there was so much attention paid to something that felt so harmless and even humorous to me. I came from North Hollywood, one of the neighborhoods where we constantly had police patrolling our streets at all times. There was all sorts of illicit activity happening on my block in particular. So to come to a neighborhood that was as focused on issues such as fruit plucking or flower plucking just really, really tickled me. And I thought it was very specific to my initiation into that community. So I kind of took a hyperbolic look at it in Plucker. So the arc of Plucker is essentially a character, a female protagonist who is new to Santa Monica, is kind of going through an initiation or a hazing of sorts in a kind of serio-comedic way, where she's been caught on CCTV or somebody's security camera plucking some fruit, and is being formally reprimanded by the Flora and Fauna Association of Santa Monica. And it becomes a very much a conversation in the Downton Abbey form of the us versus them, those above, those below, all over some fruits being picked. And so along one side of this beautiful living room in which these trials are being hosted are the perps, or the Pluckers. And on the other side are those who are the plaintiffs and or the harvesters. So the idea is to kind of, gently poke fun, but also take a look at the things that we value in society, and how there's some common ground, but also how these things can sometimes push us further apart. I think it's my first time writing for a podcast format, and it was really incredible. One, because it was trying something new, but also because of the pandemic. All the steps that you have to take that are somewhat unconventional, in that all the actors and I, we met by Zoom, and the sound designer and everyone involved, the artistic directors, the sound equipment would get sent to each actor's home, and they would have to kind of set up their own, simulate a sound space, and the sound designer would walk them through what's the best space in terms of acoustics and what have you. So just learning that and seeing how this operated in a time when I think the pandemic has really turned how we operate on its ear, was really fascinating. It was really interesting. But again, to underscore the point about Antaeus and my experience with it, just very community minded. Everybody wanted to make everybody's job a little bit easier. And it wasn't just about what is my specific role as an actor, as a writer, as the director, as the sound designer. It was, how can I help this actor, or what would make it easier for the sound designer? And it's very much, I think, speaks to theater, to community, and to the mission of Antaeus Theater. Marcello, Virulin, Kavi were all actors in my piece, and I knew of their work even beforehand. I didn't know them all personally necessarily, but I knew of them and I'd seen their work, and so I was just delighted. As I said earlier, Antaeus really brings together people who have been professionally acting forever, have these incredible credits and plaudits to their name, and are so committed to furthering theater, our professional community, both either. So I was really excited about the diversity of their backgrounds, their experiences, and that they would, you know, give their time and talent to this project. My director is just lovely. Jonathan is somebody who's been on my radar for some time, and so when the artistic directors kindly involved me in selecting a director, I, like them, was 100% gung-ho on Jonathan, and he, just like everyone else, did so much with so little. And yeah, I'm really excited about the final product. I'd love for the audience to get a good laugh out of the play. I think, you know, beyond the play, the series, and beyond the series, Antaeus Theater, I think it's a moment to really reflect, especially right now with all that's happening in our world, with the election, with all the natural disasters in California. The fires in particular come to mind, with the role of theater and what that can do, and just the human condition. I think that this series is very much about, you know, where you are physically, you know, being present in the moment. And as somebody who has lived in 5 or 6 neighborhoods in LA in the 5 years I've been in LA, I can tell you it's, you know, every neighborhood, as we know, is so distinct and creates its own space and sense of self and sense of community. And I'm hoping the zip code plays, you know, really bring that to the forefront, and hopefully make us all feel a little bit more heartened and inspired by people's experiences, fictional or otherwise. And my personal wish would be that we share these stories with others in a way to connect and further community. I think, why must somebody listen to the zip code plays? I think it's, for me, as somebody who's been writing plays for a good amount of time now, it sounded truly novel, which is, I think, if that's hard to come by, is, you know, there's lots of good ideas, and ideas that have a, you know, a light different bent to them or a slant. This one really just struck me, both in its medium, in its structure, in all the ways that, when you tell a story, it's like, wow, you really are telling a story that is going to be informed somewhat by the parameters that are suggested to you. So, for example, one of the things that I really loved about this piece, because it really stretched my writing muscles, was there's no visual cues, right? It's a podcast. But beyond that, there's no stage directions. So things that I would take for granted that could be explained, or that could be somewhat, you know, I guess stage directions could be kind of a crutch in the way exposition might be when you're writing. You had to do away with that. So it really activated the characters. I went through a lot of changes to see like what made sense, because when you don't have, you know, the visual cues to help support the audio cues, it can be confusing to a listener, an audience member. So yeah, I think that for me is a reason, is like probably one of the most compelling reasons to listen to the Zip Code Plays. I would be honored and delighted to see the Zip Code Plays produced. I think when I met with the playwrights and all the actors in the collective, like we all had a kind of a Zoom chat. It was so lovely to hear everyone's experiences, and I think we all laughed about all the unconventional takes and the scrappiness of things that we had to do to make this happen on finite budgets and resources, as one is probably used to in theater anyway. But I think this just felt so special because of, again, this kind of unprecedented time in our world, and any limitations that has imposed and hampering theater and its ability to be seen, heard, experienced. So I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, if there's an opportunity for it to be produced, I think I would just be so enchanted by that. I think theaters are so important. I think it's kind of poignant that this is the maybe the final note on which we end, because it kind of circles back to the first question that we talked about, which is what theater means to me and why I first got involved in theater. And it was my if it wasn't my first, it was one of my first experiences of really understanding what community means to me. You know, playing with other people, supporting other people, taking the I kind of out of it, because if you're not supporting your fellow playwright, casting director, lighting designer, actor, or what have you, the piece is just going to fall short. And beyond that, I think the sense of support that you get, because you really are bearing your soul in one shape, you know, in one way or one shape or one form or another, as the writer, as the actor, as the designer, as the artistic director, it's so personal. So I think anytime there's that level of vulnerability, authenticity, integrity, I'm so humbled and so grateful for it. It reminds me of what makes me feel like a part of a community. And I think theater does that for me in the best way. It creates a space where we have fun, where there's levity, where there's poignancy, where there's depth, where there's love. Um, and you get to explore it in hopefully a safe space, but in a way that I think stays with you forever. And I think that's what the best theater experiences, the best theatrical experiences, excuse me, are. And I think that's what community is making you feel supported and making you feel that you've been affected in a positive way. For me, I always encourage people to support Antaeus because of a lot of the things that I've already said in that. I really think it's unique in being a very community-minded theater that's also been around for you know, over 30 years and has such a presence, not just in Glendale, but throughout LA. It has such a name, and so many established and heralded playwrights, actors, directors, what have you, have been a part of the ensemble. And so I think it is really, truly professional, high quality work. But I also think it is supporting your community. I think when you buy a ticket to a theater, when you donate your time, your financial support, what have you, to a theater, it really is supporting your local community. There are a lot of theaters, and I'm not just speaking about Antaeus here, but a lot of theaters that offer after school programs, that offer educational programs, that offer an outlet for people to meet other people in a social and creative outlet. So I think theater is something that really makes our communities and our societies a better place. And I can't think of a better reason to support them. Hi, I'm Nayna Agrawal. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. Please visit us at antaeus.org to hear the zip code plays, and looking forward to staying in touch.